Welcome to this Strategy Show podcast covering the essentials on the subject of change management. I'm here with my fellow lecturer Amy, and today we're kicking things off with something that feels a little bit counterintuitive. When you think of a successful business, you think of something solid, something unshakable. But change management argues if a business is too solid, like a block of ice, it's probably doomed.
It's the paradox of the organisational ice cube.
Yes, the organisational ice cube. And it's a foundational idea in the material that we're covering today. We've got some theoretical models, we've got a nice little case study on a retailer called StyleCo, and we've got some psychological dives into why we all sort of hate change.
And we should probably clarify what that means. Change management, it's not just rearranging the desks. It's the whole structural process an organisation uses to alter its strategy, its tech, or even its culture, all to adapt to pressure. And that word pressure, well, that's really the key.
Because without it, nothing moves. I mean, why would you? If everything's working fine, why bother changing anything?
Precisely. Stability is comfortable. But the central argument here is that especially nowadays, the world around that comfortable block of ice is just getting hotter and hotter. And if you stay frozen, you're not going to survive.
You have to melt, move, and then reshape.
Exactly. But as we're going to see, melting an organisation that's spent decades trying to be solid, psychologically and practically very difficult.
So that's our mission today. We're going to look at why we change. So what are the pressures for change? We'll look at how we change. So some big frameworks, Lewin and Gemini 4R. And we'll look at who makes the change, the people tasked with making it happen.
Sounds good.
So let's start with those pressures. Change management breaks them down into internal and external pressures.
So the usual suspects, really.
I feel like we can cover the external ones pretty quickly. Technology, AI, automation, all that malarkey.
Yep, regulations from the government.
And competition. So, your rival launches a better product. You can't just ignore that and hope it goes away.
So those are the big headlines. But I actually think the internal pressures are more interesting. They're often sort of self-inflicted. Growth is often a major one.
Which is so ironic, isn't it? Because you succeed, you get bigger, and then your own success breaks the systems that got you there.
Well, it's the classic startup track. What works for 5 people in a garage is just total chaos for 500 in an office. So you have to add layers, add hierarchy.
Which then, of course, kills the original culture.
It's a cascade. And then you've got new leadership. A new CEO never wants to just keep things as they are because they, of course, want to make their mark.
So you're being squeezed from the inside and the outside. Now, there's a matrix in change management that I think is really, really useful for picturing this. It's the nature of change.
Yeah, that's a great tool. It really explains why some changes feel like a calm evolution and others feel like a bit of a car crash.
So you've got 2 axes. One is speed. Is the change incremental or transformational?
So like little steps versus one giant leap.
And the other axis is the driver. Are you being proactive or reactive? So are you choosing to change or are you being forced to?
Yeah, exactly.
So the ideal spot on this map, I'm guessing, is proactive and incremental.
Yep, that's the one. Top left quadrant. They call it tuning. It's where every manager on earth wants to live. You see a trend coming years away, so you start making small adjustments now.
Which is safer. You've got time, you have buy-in by the manager and employees. No one's panicking.
Yeah, exactly.
But I have a feeling that the most interesting change management stories don't happen in the tuning quadrant.
Not at all. No, the drama happens down in the forced change quadrant. That's where you're both reactive and transformational.
Reactive, so you've run out of time.
Yeah.
And transformational, so you have to do everything at once.
Well, it's the burning platform scenario. The profits are cratering, you've ignored the market, and now you have 6 months to reinvent the entire company or you go bankrupt. It's the ultimate danger zone.
Because presumably mistakes are guaranteed.
Yeah, and the workforce is terrified.
Speaking of terror, that's the perfect point to bring in the human element. When we're managing change, we need to consider the psychology of resistance. It's not just people being stubborn for the sake of it.
No, and that's a fatal mistake for any leader to make, just dismissing it as stubbornness. For example, BT, British Telecom, went through this massive restructuring. something like 55,000 redundancies.
Which is crazy. I mean, 55,000 is the population of a small town like Scarborough.
That's staggering. And when you're dealing with that, or even just one small team, the resistance is rooted in some very rational fears. And the most obvious one is economic.
So will I still have a job? Is my pay going to be hit?
So it's survival. But then there's a more subtle one, the skills gap. This one is much more about identity.
How so?
Well, imagine you've spent 20 years becoming the absolute master of a specific manual process. You're the person everyone comes to. Then one day they announce a new automated system is taking over.
So I guess suddenly you're not the expert, you're a novice again.
Well, it's worse than that because you're a novice who might not be able to learn the new thing. It's a fear of becoming obsolete. Your status just evaporates overnight, and that ties into what I think is the most important insight here, implied criticism.
Explain that one for me.
When a manager comes in and says, we're launching a huge new program to fix our broken processes, what the employee hears is,
everything you've been doing for the last 10 years was wrong.
Exactly. It feels like a direct attack on their past work, their legacy. So they fight the new system, not just because it's new, but to defend their own history.
So if as a manager you try to just bulldoze through all that resistance, we call that a coercive approach. And I guess you're asking for a mutiny.
Yeah, you get strikes. You get what they call malicious compliance. People will follow the new rules so literally that the whole system grinds to a halt.
And your best people just leave.
Yep, first one's out the door.
Okay, so brute force is out. We need a plan. This brings us to the first big model, which is Lewin's force field analysis. Sounds like something out of Star Trek.
Yeah, it does, but it's really about the ice cube again. Kurt Lewin, he's a kind of the grandfather of all of this. His idea is that in any situation, you've got driving forces pushing for the change.
Right, so things like the new CEO, the scary competition, falling profits.
And you have restraining forces pushing back. The unions, employee fear, just plain old apathy.
Okay, so you've got these two sets of forces that are pushing against each other.
Now, the gut instinct for most managers is to just ramp up the driving forces.
So shout louder, show more scary graphs about falling revenue.
Do this or we all lose our jobs, that kind of thing. But here's Lewin's big point. Pushing harder on your side usually just makes the other side push back harder. You're just increasing the tension. It's like compressing a spring.
So you create panic, not progress. So the smart move is what? To focus on the other side?
You focus on weakening the restraining forces.
So instead of yelling about declining profits, you create a training program to deal with the fear of the skills gap.
Yeah, exactly. Or you guarantee no redundancies for a year to remove the economic fear. You involve the team in designing the new process to remove that implied criticism. You lower the barrier, and the change can flow forward naturally.
Which then leads right into Lewin's famous 3-step process for actually moving that ice cube. Step 1 was unfreeze.
Yeah, this is the prep phase, and it's often the hardest. You have to essentially break those old habits. You've got to create dissatisfaction with the status quo.
Now that sounds tricky because you're telling people, hey, this comfortable situation we're all in, it's actually a huge problem.
It's very dangerous. Do it wrong and you just demoralise everyone. But you have to make the case that standing still is riskier than moving. You have to melt the ice.
Then once everything's fluid and chaotic and melted, you move to step 2, which is change.
That's the implementation. New software, new team structures, the actual doing bit.
And then step 3 is refreeze.
And this is the step everyone forgets. Once the change is done, you've got to lock it in. Update job descriptions, change the bonus structure to reward the new behaviours, celebrate the success. If you don't refreeze, the organisation is like elastic.
It just snaps back to the old way of doing things.
The minute you turn your back.
Now, for all Lewin's model is a great one, we can throw a little bit of shade on it. It's argued that the model is maybe a bit simplistic for today.
Well, I guess it's a product of its time, the mid-20th century. It assumes you move from one stable state, ice cube A, to another stable state, ice cube B. But in today's world, do we ever really get to a stable state?
I really wish we did. Right, I mean, at the moment, we're lucky if we get 5 minutes before the next big thing drops.
Yeah, exactly. So the critique is that refreezing might be an outdated concept, which brings us to a more modern framework, the Gemini framework.
And this is where we could start talking about an example business, Styleco, a messy real-world turnaround.
Styleco is a great stand-in for pretty much any big retailer right now. It's a brick-and-mortar clothing chain. Sales are tanking, customers moving online, they're in big trouble. Their answer to this is to enact a huge change, a pivot to focus on selling online.
Which makes sense because they need more than just an unfreeze, they need a total transformation.
Which the Gemini framework tackles with 4 pillars, the 4 R's: reframing, restructuring, revitalizing, and renewal.
Okay, let's walk through those using this kind of imaginary Styleco company as an example, because the specifics are what make it click. So first up, we have reframing.
This is the cognitive shift. It's the big one.
And it's more than just a new slogan on the wall, right?
Oh, much deeper than that. Styleco has to stop seeing themselves as a shop that sells clothes and start seeing themselves as a digital experience provider.
Now that sounds a little like marketing jargon, but
think about what it means. If you're a shop, your main job is to keep the shelves stocked. If you're a digital experience, your main job is managing data and logistics. Reframing sets the entire stage.
Okay, so once the mindset has changed, then you hit the second R, which is restructuring. And this sounds like the painful part.
Yeah, this is the surgery. For Styleco, it means smashing the silos between their physical stores and their website. In the old world, the warehouse team and the web team, they probably never even spoke to each other.
So different bosses, different budgets.
Yeah, totally. Restructuring means merging all of that and also potentially delayering.
Delayering, which is basically just a nice way of saying let's fire the middle managers.
It is. It's about flattening the organisation so you can move faster, doing whatever you need to do to get rid of waste.
Okay, so you've changed the company's mind and its body, but you can't just cut your way to growth. So that's the third R, which is revitalizing.
This is my favourite one. This is all about growth. It's how you invent your future. For a company like Styleco, they can't just sell the same shirts online. They need to consider innovations. They might launch Style Box, a subscription service where a stylist sends you a curated box of clothes.
That's a huge pivot because it turns, I guess, a one-off customer into a long-term relationship.
Yeah, exactly. They could use the web functionality they have developed to do things like virtual try-on apps. Revitalizing is about answering the question, why should we even exist in 5 years? What more can we do to innovate? It gets the market excited, and crucially, it gives the employees something positive to focus on. It's not just about cuts.
But I suppose none of that works without the last area of renewal, the people.
Soul of the change. You can have the best app in the world, but if the people packing the boxes don't pair, it all falls apart. For Styleco, renewal means a huge investment in training. They have to teach store staff who are used to folding sweaters how to use digital inventory tools.
And presumably, they have to change the reward system as well.
Right. You can't tell people, be innovative, and then only pay them a bonus for showing up on time. A company like Styleco could change incentives to reward things like customer engagement. Renewal's all about making sure your people have both the skill and the will to operate in the new world.
It feels so much more holistic than Lewin. Lewin feels a bit like physics force, resistance. Gemini feels more like biology trying to evolve a whole new organism.
That's actually a great way to put it. It sees that all these things, vision, structure, product, people, they're all tangled together.
So we have a theory, we have the frameworks, but who actually does all this work? There seems to be lots of kind of mentions of a concept called change agents.
The person has to walk into the room with the bad news and the big vision.
And there's a bit of a cage match here, the internal agent versus the external change agent.
Well, that's the classic dilemma. Do you promote from within or do you hire a consultant?
Let's do the internal agent first. Let's say it's Bob from operations. What are the pros?
Well, Bob knows the company culture. He knows who really holds the power. He knows where the bodies are buried, so to speak. And he's already on the payroll, so he's cheaper.
And I guess people probably trust Bob because he's one of them.
Well, usually, yeah. But the big disadvantage is that Bob is part of the system you're trying to fix. He might be too institutionalised, unable to see there's a different way of doing things. We've always done it this way.
And also, he still has his day job to do as well.
Yeah, exactly. So maybe enter the external agent, the consultant.
The fresh pair of eyes.
They bring objectivity. They're not worried about office politics. They don't have to sit next to the person they've just made redundant. Company picnic, and they're trained specifically in this stuff.
But nobody ever seems happy to see an external agent arrive.
Well, no, because I think they're often seen as like the hatchet man or woman. There's immediate suspicion. This person doesn't know our business. They're here just to cut costs. They're just going to send a huge invoice.
So relying only on an outsider can trigger that massive resistance that we talked about earlier.
Which is why the most successful examples like Styleco tend to use a kind of hybrid model. You bring in the external expert for the framework and the tough questions, but you pair them up with an internal champion or champions who can build trust and translate the vision.
So really, you need the bad cop and the good cop.
Or maybe the architect and the builder.
Oh, right. Well, we've covered a lot of ground, from the organisational ice cube to the slush of modern business. If you had to step back from all of this, what is the one big takeaway for someone listening to this?
I think it's that resistance to change isn't a bug. It's a feature of being human. We're all wired to protect our security, our status, our routines.
So a good manager doesn't fight it.
No, they expect it and they should plan for it. They understand that you can't just announce a new vision that's reframing without also fixing the broken structure and, helping people through it with renewal. It's as much about empathy as it is about economics.
And I keep thinking about that critique of Lewin's refreezing step.
Yeah, it's a really provocative thought to end on, I think. The world is now changing faster than any single company can adapt. Then the goal can't be to refreeze into a new perfect block of ice.
Because whatever block you refreeze into is going to be obsolete in 6 months anyway.
Yeah, even sooner. So maybe we have to get comfortable with the idea of living in a state of permanent slush.
Well, that sounds incredibly messy and very stressful.
It is, but permanent slush just means an organisation that's always fluid, always learning, never gets too rigid. It's exhausting, but it's probably the only way to survive what's coming.
So, next time you, as the listener, feel that dread because your company's not changing the software again, just remember, you're not melting, you're just learning to swim in the slush.
Thanks for listening to this Change Management podcast. We'll see you next time. If you found this useful, please follow the channel so you can be alerted whenever a new podcast is released.